What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved comedic actors walks onto a daytime talk show and refuses to play along with the script? What happens when the questions get too personal? When the assumptions cut too deep? And when a guest decides that enough is enough? Well, buckle up. Because what unfolded between Ben Stiller and Joy Behar on The View wasn't just uncomfortable television. It was a master class in how quickly things can spiral out of control when two strong personalities refuse to back down. Before we dive into this clash that had everyone talking, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this debate. Because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this. The tension started the moment Ben Stiller sat down. Now, you have to understand the context here. Stiller was on the show to promote his latest directorial project, a serious drama that marked a significant departure from his comedy roots. This wasn't Zoolander, this wasn't Meet the Parents. This was something personal, something he'd poured years of his life into. And from the very first question, it became clear that Joy Behar wasn't interested in talking about the film on its own terms. Joy leaned forward with that knowing smile she gets when she thinks she's about to land a zinger and said, "So Ben, I have to ask, after all these years of making us laugh, why the sudden shift to such heavy material? Are you having some kind of midlife crisis we should know about?" The other hosts laughed nervously. Whoopi shifted in her seat. But Ben didn't laugh. He paused, his expression hardening just slightly, and replied, "I wouldn't call it sudden, Joy. I've been directing and producing dramatic content for over a decade. This isn't a departure. It's a continuation of work I've been doing alongside comedy for most of my career." Joy waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. You know what I mean. You're the funny guy. That's what people love about you. Don't you think your fans are going to be disappointed when they show up expecting laughs and get, what did one reviewer call it, oppressive melancholy?" That's when you could see something shift in Stiller's demeanor. His jaw tightened. He sat up a little straighter. "I think my fans are intelligent enough to appreciate different kinds of storytelling," he said, his voice measured but firm. "And honestly, I think that reviewer you're quoting didn't actually watch the film, because that's not what it is at all." Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. "Well, I'm just saying what people are thinking, Ben. You've built your entire career on being likable and funny. This feels like you're trying to prove something, like you're asking to be taken seriously as a capital A artist. It comes across as a little, I don't know, pretentious?" The word hung in the air like a grenade. Pretentious. You could see Sarah Haynes wince. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked down at her notes, clearly wanting to redirect. But Ben Stiller wasn't about to let it slide. "Pretentious," he repeated slowly. "Because I made a film about something I care about? Because I wanted to explore themes that mattered to me? Joy, with all due respect, I've never asked anyone to take me seriously. I just made a film. You're the one putting all these other labels on it." Joy wasn't backing down either. "I'm just being honest, Ben. That's what we do here. We have real conversations. And the real conversation is that people are confused about why Ben Stiller, the guy from Dodgeball, is suddenly making movies about grief and loss and all this heavy stuff. It feels inauthentic." "Inauthentic," Stiller said. And now there was an edge in his voice that cut through the studio. "You're saying my grief is inauthentic? You're saying my interest in serious subjects is inauthentic? Joy, you don't know me. You don't know what I've experienced or what drives me as an artist. You're making assumptions based on a persona you think I have." "I'm making observations based on your body of work," Joy shot back. "And your body of work is comedy. That's not an insult. That's just a fact. You're good at it. Why not stick with what you're good at?" The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't playful banter anymore. This was a genuine confrontation. Whoopi tried to interject with, "I think what Joy is trying to say is..." But Ben cut her off. "No, Whoopi, I know what Joy is trying to say. She's trying to say that I should stay in my lane. That comedians can't be serious. That if you make people laugh, you're not allowed to make them think or feel anything else. And you know what? That's exactly the kind of limiting, reductive thinking that keeps artists from growing and evolving. Joy's eyes flashed. Don't put words in my mouth, Ben. I never said you can't evolve. I said this particular evolution feels forced. There's a difference. Forced, Stiller repeated incredulously. I spent 3 years writing this script. I spent another 2 years fighting to get it made. I put my own money into it because studios wouldn't touch it. That's not forced, Joy. That's dedication. That's passion. But apparently, to you, that's pretentious. Sarah Haynes jumped in, trying to defuse the situation. Ben, I think the film sounds fascinating, and I personally can't wait to see it. Can you tell us more about what inspired this particular story? But Ben was locked in now. He turned to Sarah briefly, acknowledged her question with a nod, but then swung back to Joy. You know what I think this is really about, Joy? I think you can't handle the fact that people contain multitudes, that someone can be funny and serious, light and dark, that we're not one-dimensional characters in your daytime television. The other hosts were frantically trying to signal to the producers. This was going off the rails, but it was too late to stop it now. Ben Stiller leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Joy, my father died 2 years ago. He was a comedian, a brilliant one. And you know what he told me before he passed? He told me he regretted never taking the dramatic roles he was offered. He regretted letting people pigeonhole him. So when you sit there and tell me that honoring his memory by making the film he inspired me to make is vanity, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting his legacy. The studio went absolutely silent. You could hear the cameras whirring. Even Joy seemed momentarily taken aback, her expression flickering with something that might have been regret. But she recovered quickly, her voice softer but still firm. I'm sorry about your father, Ben. I truly am. But that doesn't change my opinion about the film. Personal tragedy doesn't automatically make art meaningful. Stiller's face went red. You could see his hands gripping the armrest of his chair. Wow, he said. Just wow. You know, I came here today thinking we'd have an actual conversation about the work, about the craft. But instead, I get armchair psychology and cheap shots disguised as honesty. It's not a cheap shot to have an opinion, Joy fired back, her voice rising. And it's not my job to sit here and blow smoke about how amazing everything you do is. This is The View. We give our views. That's literally the premise of the show. You're right, Ben said, his voice tight. But it is your job to treat your guests with basic respect. And you've failed at that today, Joy. There's a difference between having an opinion and being dismissive, between critique and condescension. Whoopi jumped in, her voice firm. Okay, let's all take a breath here. Ben, I understand you're frustrated, but Ben wasn't hearing it. No, Whoopi, this needs to be said. Joy decided before I even sat down what narrative she wanted to push. She wanted the story to be about the comedian who thinks he's too good for comedy now, and no amount of actual conversation was going to change that because she wasn't listening. Joy stood up now, her chair scraping loudly. You want to talk about listening, Ben? You haven't listened to a word I've said. I didn't say you shouldn't make dramatic films. I said this particular film feels like it's trying too hard. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, when I see it, I'll love it. But I'm allowed to have my doubts without you acting like I've committed some cardinal sin. Stiller stood up too, his microphone cord stretching taut. You're allowed to have doubts, Joy. But the way you expressed those doubts was designed to belittle. You called it a midlife crisis. You called it pretentious. You called it a vanity project. Those aren't critiques, Joy. Those are insults, wrapped in the language of honest conversation. The tension in the studio was electric now. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to cut in. Guys, maybe we should. Joy cut her off. No, let him finish. Clearly Ben has a lot he needs to get off his chest. Please, continue. Tell us all how I'm the villain here for not fawning over your serious directorial debut. Ben shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping. You see, this is what you do. You twist everything. I'm not asking you to fawn, Joy. I'm asking you to engage with the actual work instead of projecting your assumptions onto it. You haven't seen the film. You admitted that. So your entire argument is based on what? Your preconceived notions about who I am? I'm basing it on your track record, Joy shot back. I'm basing it on the fact that Hollywood is full of comedians who think one serious role or one serious film is going to transform their legacy. And most of the time, it doesn't work. So I'm guilty by association, Ben said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm guilty because other people failed. That's your logic here. I'm saying the odds aren't in your favor, Joy replied. I'm saying that what you're attempting is difficult and rare, and from what I can see, you haven't earned the benefit of the doubt yet. Sarah Haynes finally managed to get a word in. Ben, maybe you could help us understand what makes this film different. Ben turned to Sarah, his expression softening. Sarah, thank you for asking. The film is about a man who loses his son and has to confront all the ways he failed as a father. It's about guilt and whether redemption is even possible when the person you hurt most is gone. It's personal because I became a father while writing it, and suddenly, all these fears about inadequacy became real to me. He turned back to Joy, his voice hardening. But Joy doesn't want to hear about that. She doesn't want to know about the 2 years I spent researching grief support groups. She doesn't want to know about any of it because she's already made up her mind. It's not that she disagrees with me. It's that she won't even give me a fair chance. Joy crossed her arms. I gave you plenty of chances, Ben. I asked you questions. You just didn't like the questions. And honestly, your reaction right now is proving my point. You're so defensive about this film that you can't handle even the slightest bit of skepticism. What's going to happen when real critics start weighing in? Real critics, Ben said slowly, engage with the work. They watch the film. They think about it. They form opinions based on what's actually on screen. You're not being a critic right now, Joy. You're being a contrarian for the sake of it. Whoopi stood up, her voice firm. All right, that's enough. We're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back... No, Joy interrupted, her eyes locked on Ben. When we come back, Ben won't be here because he can't handle a tough interview. That's what this is really about. He came here expecting softball questions and praise, and when he didn't get it, he threw a tantrum. A tantrum? Ben repeated incredulously. Joy, I've sat through hundreds of interviews. I've been on Howard Stern. I've done press for bad movies. Flop movies. Bringing up my father wasn't manipulation, Ben continued, his voice shaking now with emotion. It was context. It was truth. But you've made it clear that truth doesn't matter to you. Only your narrative matters. Only scoring points matters. Joy took a step closer to the table. Oh, don't you dare try to make yourself the victim here, Ben. You came on this show to promote your film. I asked you legitimate questions about it. The fact that you can't handle pushback without getting emotional says more about you than it does about me. Legitimate questions, Ben said, his voice rising to match hers. You didn't ask me about the cinematography. You didn't ask me about the script structure. You didn't ask me about the performances or the themes or anything substantive. You asked me if I was having a midlife crisis. You asked me if I thought I was too good for comedy. Those aren't legitimate questions, Joy. Those are provocations. Because sometimes provocations get to the truth, Joy fired back. Sometimes when you push people, they reveal who they really are. And what you've revealed today is that you're insecure about this film. You're worried people won't take it seriously. And instead of letting the work speak for itself, you're here getting defensive and angry because one person dared to be skeptical. Alyssa Farah Griffin stood up now. Okay, I think we really need to. Ben cut her off, still locked on Joy. You know what the real problem is here? You can't stand that I'm not playing your game. You want me to get flustered. You want me to stumble. You want the moment where Ben Stiller loses his cool on The View so you can clip it and share it and talk about it for weeks? Well, congratulations, Joy. You got your moment. I hope it was worth it. Worth it, Joy repeated, her eyes flashing. You think I'm doing this for clicks? For ratings? I've been doing this job longer than you've been making movies, Ben. I don't need you to create moments. I ask hard questions, because that's what journalism is supposed to be. Journalism, Ben said with a bitter laugh. This isn't journalism, Joy. This is gossip dressed up as discourse. This is taking cheap shots at guests and calling it brave truth-telling. You're not Edward R. Murrow. You're just mean. The audience gasped again. You could see producers in the wings frantically gesturing. Whoopi put her head in her hands. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear. But Joy, to her credit, or her detriment, didn't back down. Mean, she said slowly. I'm mean because I won't coddle you. I'm mean because I have standards and expectations. I'm mean because I think the Ben Stiller who made Tropic Thunder and The Cable Guy has more to offer the world than some self-serious meditation on grief that nobody asked for. Nobody asked for, Ben repeated, his voice dropping to something dangerous and quiet. You know what nobody asked for, Joy? Nobody asked for your permission. Nobody asked for your blessing. I didn't make this film for you. I made it because it needed to exist. Because stories about loss and pain and trying to find meaning in the wreckage matter. But you wouldn't know anything about that because you've spent your entire career playing it safe, sitting behind this desk, taking shots at people who are actually creating things. Now it was Joy's turn to look stunned. Excuse me, she said, her voice tight. You don't know anything about my career. You don't know what I've sacrificed or what I've built? You're right, I don't, Ben said. Just like you don't know anything about mine beyond the surface, beyond the box office numbers and the memes, and the Saturday Night Live impressions. But the difference is, I'm not pretending to. I'm not sitting here telling you what you should or shouldn't do with your career. I'm not diminishing your choices or questioning your motives. Joy pointed at him. Because you're a guest on my show. That's the dynamic here. You came into my house. Your house, Ben said. Right. And in your house, guests are targets. In your house, genuine conversation takes a backseat to confrontation. In your house, the only rule is that Joy gets to be right. Whoopi stood up forcefully, her chair sliding back. Okay, that is officially enough. We are done here. Ben, I think it's time for you to go. Ben looked at Whoopi, and for a moment, his expression softened again. Whoopi, I respect you. I've always respected you. But I can't sit here anymore and pretend this is okay. He started unclipping his microphone, his hands shaking slightly. Joy, I hope you're proud of yourself. I really do. Because you succeeded in exactly what you set out to do. You made me angry. You made me defensive. You pushed and pushed until I had no choice but to push back. And now you get to tell everyone that Ben Stiller couldn't handle The View. Joy's jaw was clenched. You're the one who couldn't handle it, Ben. Not me. I was doing my job. Your job, Ben said, now fully standing with his microphone in hand, is supposed to be having conversations. Your job is supposed to be exploring ideas. Your job is supposed to be giving viewers insight into the people who sit in that chair. But instead, you turn it into a blood sport. You turn it into a competition where there has to be a winner and a loser. And you know what? You can have this win, Joy. You can have it. Because I'd rather lose this fight than become the kind of person who needs to tear others down to feel important. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the crew had stopped moving. It was as if the entire studio was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Joy finally spoke, her voice quieter now but still edged with steel. If you feel that strongly about it, Ben, then you should go. Nobody's stopping you. Ben nodded slowly. You're right. Nobody's stopping me. He turned to the other hosts. Sarah, Alyssa, it was nice meeting you both. I'm sorry you had to witness this. Then he looked at Whoopi. And Whoopi, I meant what I said. I've always admired your work. This isn't about you. Whoopi nodded, her expression unreadable. I understand, Ben. Take care of yourself. Ben turned back to Joy one last time. You know, the sad thing is, I actually think we could have had an interesting conversation if you'd wanted to. If you'd come at this with genuine curiosity, instead of predetermined conclusions. But you didn't want that. You wanted conflict. So here we are. Here we are, Joy echoed. And for the record, Ben, I stand by everything I said. Every word. I know you do, Ben replied. That's the problem. He placed his microphone on the table with a decisive thud. Then, without another word, he walked off the set. The cameras followed him as he disappeared into the wings, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. For a long moment, nobody moved. The audience sat frozen. The hosts looked at each other,